Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Hi, this is Chuck Blakeman, and welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on the idea that leaders are not managers, managers are not leaders, and managers and the position of management is not necessary. Today, I'm going to do part 2 to develop some unpopular but well-researched ideas around how businesses structure themselves around layers and layers of unnecessary management. We call it the management tax. And I'll share how management and leadership have nothing in common. In short, management of people is never helpful. Leadership of people is always helpful. Management is for machines. Leadership is for people. Or another way to say it, the principle is manage stuff, lead people. Let's get started. In the last podcast, we challenged the idea that managers make people more productive and showed some real-world examples of many companies who have flourished for 60 plus years with no managers in the building. We did that in a couple of previous podcasts as well. We established that we have bought off on a way of structuring business around layers of management with zero research showing that that works. But the many companies functioning without managers show emphatically that teams are actually more productive without managers than with them. But while management of people is never helpful, leadership is critical. As John Kotter, the former business professor at Harvard, believes, leadership and management have nothing in common. I'm there with him. We need leadership. In my opinion, we don't need the management layers that create the management tax that kills profitability and actually degrades productivity amongst the people on the teams that they manage. Today, I want to address the stark difference between management and leadership, how the two have absolutely nothing in common, and why leadership without management is so key to the companies that are flourishing right now without managers at any level. The best way to understand them both is to contrast management and leadership with each other. Following is the #1 tactical difference. Managers tell, leaders ask. When I am making decisions, let me say that again. Managers tell, leaders ask. This is one of the fundamental tactical differences between the two. This is how you know you're dealing for yourself, if you're leading or if you're managing. When I'm making decisions, that's telling. When I'm making decisions, I'm managing, not leading. Making decisions, telling, is not the strength of a great leader. It is, in fact, a failure of leadership. Making decisions is a failure of leadership. Leaders instead use questions they ask to train others to solve problems and make decisions and then get that blankety blank out of the way. You might have been inadvertently labeled as a manager, but if you're focused on asking questions, training, and then becoming less and less important in your position, you're leading. Your title should be changed to reflect your contribution as a leader. Leaders delegate the responsibility for a result as well as just the task. They don't delegate the task, they delegate the responsibility. They stop making the decision. That's how you know that you've delegated the responsibility. It's another way to know, because you're not making the decision. They are. And they're not doing it in a vacuum. They still bring it back to you and say, here's what we're doing, here's the report. If you don't like it, you retrain. So this isn't chaos and anarchy, as some people claim. It is, in fact, more organized than any top-down pyramid scheme in any organization I've ever seen. Unlike managers, the leader trains the team members to gather the data, develop the report, analyze it along with the strategic leader. They bring it to the strategic leader, and then the strategic leader asks more hard questions. Perhaps surprisingly, great leaders react to data coming at them. I said this earlier. Whereas managers hold on to the clipboard and do the data gathering and reporting, writing themselves. They think that's their job. I'm going to go chase data and compile it. No, that's a line person's job, and you can get people set up. Might take some work, but you can get people set up to learn how to gather their own data and then feed it back to you. Dave Thomas did this. Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, the hamburger joint. He had one number come and find him every day. the number of buns sold nationwide or worldwide. From that one number, how many buns did we sell today? He can extrapolate a wide range of financial and sales information. He worked proactively up front to help set up this system. Took a lot of work, but then led reactively as he reacted to the numbers coming at him. Again, leaders may be proactive up front in setting things up so that others have the responsibility. But they do that so that they can become reactive. Leaders are reactive. Managers are much more proactive forever. Let me say it maybe a little more clearly. Leaders are proactive up front so that they can be reactive to the data coming at them later. In Dave's case at Wendy's, others weren't responsible for similar tasks, but for the entire process of getting the data to Dave. It wasn't just gathering the stuff, they got it to him in a compiled form. This is important because, as we shared previously, when we delegate tasks, people feel used. But when we delegate the responsibility for the result, the broader responsibility for the result, and the decision making, the metrics, the process, and how to improve all those things, that responsibility creates ownership. And ownership is the most powerful motivator in business and frankly in life. I own my life. Let's just start there. All right, I want to expand on this idea that leaders are necessary and managers aren't by saying I would recommend that we turn everybody at work into a leader. Now that flies in the face of what we think might work, but that's because we have the wrong version of leadership in our head. So let's explore that. I'm going to say everyone, no exceptions. In a participation age company, every single person working in your organization can and should be leading others daily in some way, shape, or form. Everybody. So how can everyone lead? Sounds crazy. As a general rule of inclusive and distributed leadership, we use the following definition to capture all the ways people can lead. Leadership is this: any act that improves the life, situation, or performance of another individual. I'll say that again. Leadership is any act that improves the life, the situation, or the performance of another individual. By this definition, anyone can lead and everyone should. If there's 4 people pushing brooms in the warehouse and one of them figures out what somebody figured out quite a while ago, that if you push a broom in a circle, it's actually more efficient than pushing it back and forth across the floor, and they teach the others to do that, that's leadership. You can see the striking difference in this definition. Any act that improves the life, situation, or performance of an individual. Contrast that with our definition of management: the use of power and authority to command and control for the sake of the manager. The leadership definition is about serving. And in many ancient languages, the word leader is actually the word servant. It's the same thing. So by this definition, everyone can and should lead. There's a continuum of leadership when you create this kind of thing in the world around you. In the factory system model, leadership is for the few. You know, the people at the top of the pyramid, the strategists, the visionaries. But in a healthy, mission-centered organization, leadership is for everyone. And it exists on a continuum from strategic leaders to tactical leaders, the guys with the brooms. Most of us are doing a little bit of both. Universally distributed leadership, as with all the tools and practices in these podcasts, is designed to turn hierarchy on its side and encourage us to relate horizontally to each other, not vertically to a power struggle. All 4 expressions of leadership that we're going to talk about are both equal and necessary and should be celebrated and developed by the organization. So for those of you watching, there's an illustration showing the leadership continuum. And all I want to say about this is that we tend to think leadership is one of these 4 things. Here's the 4 ways in which people can lead, at least 4. You might add others. To be something, to be, to do something, to be, to do, to relate, to be a friend, to be a mentor, to be, to do, to relate, and to inspire. Those are the 4. Be, do, relate, inspire. Being and doing are much more tactical. And relating, inspiring are tactical to strategic to highly strategic. We think of inspiring as being the only kind of leadership. The dude on the white horse out front with the flag. That is only one of the four kinds of leadership. And frankly, it's the rarest, and it should be. We don't need a lot of those people. We need a lot more people to be something, to have the character that causes me to want to be kinder to people, or to do something to people who are highly skilled and can teach me more about how to do something, or to be good friends and good mentors and good mediators and people who know how to build relationships, who can teach me how to build relationships. We need much more of those three kinds of leadership. People with broad or expansive views of issues and opportunities are more strategic leaders. A tactical leader has a deeper, more detailed local impact. This isn't a qualitative division, simply a practical one where people find their best contribution wherever they are in the mission statement. Many people function both strategically and tactically to varying degrees. Some people might be 70% visionary and inspirational and 30% in the weeds working on the tactical stuff. It depends on your gifting and what you're good at. Even in the pyramid scheme hierarchy of the factory system, many managers, thankfully, don't function like the managers they were hired to be, but they function more intuitively like leaders. While their title may be manager, they focus instead on improving the life, the situation, and/or the performance of others. They're acting like leaders even when they've been told to manage. They know intuitively it's a bad idea to treat these people like children. When people tell me about a great manager they've had, it is likely that the manager was functioning as a servant leader, not as a manager. They were asking great questions, pushing others forward, mentoring, resourcing, connecting, and training, which means they're getting out of the way. The leader is becoming less and less important. So most importantly, they're getting out of the way so decisions can be made locally where they have to be lived out. The following graphic that we're going to talk about here on the visuals, on the video, you don't have to worry about seeing it. I'll describe it to you if you're listening. It highlights the leadership continuum. It emphasizes heterarchy, not hierarchy, heterarchy, Heter-archy, which is organic leadership, springing up as needed, and then stepping aside or stepping down as its purpose is fulfilled. The four categories more appropriately would be swirled around together. These categories of tactical, strategic leadership, and the mission. And it should be understood that these are functionally, in many ways, flat organizations. If you turned this illustration on its side, you wouldn't be able to see it because it's not a power struggle. It's not a top-down pyramid. It's simply about functions, and all the functions have equal importance. I don't care who you are. If you're the CEO of the most important company in the world, if people don't do the most tactical things in that company, it's going to fall apart. Everybody is important and everybody has a critical function. This transition to distributed leadership can happen quite smoothly, but it does not happen overnight. After 200 years of the factory system, it is hard to say, hey, you're now all leaders, I'll be in my office. In fact, I would encourage you not to do that, because remember, we say the best way to make change is not to take something away. Okay, I'm no longer your manager, goodbye. Not a good idea. Let's add something first. Let's add some things that would actually give them more stability and more comfort. It will take a concerted effort to reawaken the innate leadership potential of everyone in the organization. I coach a lot of business owners and CEOs and team leaders, and I use this phrase all the time. When you first start doing this, you first start requiring that people actually begin to make decisions again. It's going to be like pushing water uphill with a rake. It's a great visual. You just feel like you're not getting anywhere. And it's because you have to reawaken the innate leadership potential that people are no longer wanting to use at work. I talked in the last podcast about a guy, I still remember walking up to me at a company that was replacing their top-down industrial age factory system pyramid with this new model of distributed decision-making and distributed leadership. And he said, I don't want to do this. I got hired here specifically because I knew I would never have to make a decision. He got on board, he's making decisions, and he grew up at work. He could make decisions, he just didn't want to do it at work because he had enough to do at home. So it will take some energy to reawaken this, and they'll have to see it in your eyes. And if you waver, if you don't believe that they can and should make decisions, they're not going to do it, because if somebody else is going to pick up my socks and do my laundry, I'm going to let them. It's just the way human nature is. All right, so back to this idea of leadership that managers tell and leaders ask. The best leaders make the fewest decisions, and they're on a mission to make fewer and fewer and fewer decisions all the time. The art of traditional management involves planning, organizing, staffing, controlling, and the shameful act of manipulating human capital. Yep, that's what we're called, human capital. I found all these practices embedded in the operations of the giant software company mentioned previously. This is the traditional definition of management: planning, organizing, staffing, controlling, and manipulating human capital. Baby, that's telling. That's what that is. That's all that is. That's me creating codependence. You are here so that I can plan for you, organize for you, staff for you, control you, and manipulate you to do what I want. So I found all those embedded in that giant software company's manual. The term human capital relegates me to a resource. Again, I am not a machine. I am not a human resource. I am a human being. In fact, in the factory system management model, people are capital to be manipulated and controlled. They're just an asset. They happen to have a heartbeat, but that's not relevant. In fact, we call them capital and workforce and other non-human things because it makes it easier to manipulate them and control them. It's like when people go to war, we talk about, the word, I love this, kinetic energy, which is code for we're going to shoot people and kill them. But we don't want to say that because it's easier to have kinetic energy than it is to shoot people and kill them. So we're going to have people who are capital, and we're going to call them a workforce and human resource. Leaders train others because they embrace this following principle, not any of that nonsense. Here's a principle that I learned writing, I think, my second book. And it was a revelation to me. It just came to me like a bolt of lightning. The art of leadership is to know how few decisions the leader needs to make. They don't make no decisions, but they are constantly on a mission to make fewer and fewer, and maybe they could get to make where they make none. But that's the art of leadership. How do I make fewer decisions than I made last week and the week before that and the week before that? The only possible way to do that is distributed decision-making, distributed leadership, training others, and getting the heck out of the way. Good leaders are passionate about training team members to make decisions that managers used to make when they were planning, organizing, staffing, controlling, and the shameful act of manipulating me. Distributed leadership creates a healthy wave of decision-making throughout the organization. Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter and Square, says, and I stole this from him, if I have to make a decision, we have an organizational failure. In the participation age, a manager making individual decisions for others is failing at strategic leadership. But when you're focused on asking questions, you're training others to make decisions, and then you're leading. When you're focused on asking questions, you're training others to think and to make decisions, and then you are leading. The art of leadership is to know how few decisions the leader needs to make, and I get there by training others to make the decisions I wanted to make in order to be codependent. So, manage stuff, lead people. In our company, we only manage stuff. I'm not saying that management as an activity is something that needs to go away. I've been very careful to not say that. I would say management of people needs to go away. But all the stuff needs to be managed. Everything in my office, I got this microphone right here, and guess what? It is stupid and it is lazy. And I can prove it because I can come back a week later and it'll still be sitting right here unless I manage it. Computers are stupid and lazy. Numbers are stupid and lazy. Software, processes, systems, delivery of goods and services, trucks, accounting, marketing, sales. All of these things, the scissors on my desk, they're all stupid and lazy. They all need to be managed. And everybody needs to manage stuff. So everybody is a manager of stuff, and everybody is in some way a leader of people. We all lead each other by asking questions, by being something, doing something, being a better friend or a mentor, being a visionary, creating guidance, training and support, and then getting the heck out of the way, treating people like adults and believing that they want to grow up at work and make decisions. Not in a vacuum, but with me, not as a salute by me or by them. The leader's quest is to ask questions first, then follow through by training others to solve and decide, rendering the leader less necessary every day. The word question has the word quest in it. I'm on a quest to make myself unnecessary and less necessary every day. It's an important enough thing to say again. The art of leadership is to know how few decisions the leader needs to make. Become a leader. Stop solving. Stop deciding. And focus instead on asking questions that train other people to solve and decide. Everyone in your organization will be better off if you do that. Okay, so now we've gotten rid of managers. Managers no longer exist. Don't be terrified. Don't be scared of that. Don't be mad. I'm not saying you have to be fired or let go. In the companies that I've done this with, I would say less than, oh gosh, easily less than 5%, maybe less than 2%, maybe less than one. One out of 100, one out of 50 people who are managers actually end up leaving the company. And in almost every case, I think with rare exception, they left on their own because they did not want to do this. They were comfortable telling people what to do. They were comfortable being worshiped and adored and having the power to hire and fire all in their hands instead of in the hands of the team. They wanted to keep all that stuff, so they left. And good for them. That's okay. They'll find somewhere else. There's a lot more companies doing the top-down pyramid scheme thing. And then maybe one or two people have been let go who wanted to try this but didn't want to try it. They verbalized it, but it just wasn't them. So the point of that rant is that most of the managers who used to be managers are going to be repositioned and they're going to love. They reposition themselves. Hey, can I rejoin the team? There's 10 things that the team wants and needs that we talked about in the Google studies from the last podcast. There's 10 things that people need. And I'm really good at delivering 3 of those. Can I continue to deliver those 3 things? And then let's find other people on the team to deliver the other 7. And all of us will co-lead, not co-manage. And yes, we'll get a little salary bump because we're doing some things that we weren't doing before. And we might even need another team member because now not everyone is 100% in production. Maybe one of the person is 60% production and 40% leadership, another one's 70-30, 80-20. And so they get paid a differential because they're taking on more responsibilities. But it's still less expensive than having one manager, way less expensive, even if you have another team member. And more importantly, if someone decides to leave, you don't have this giant vacuum created by one person who has all of the keys in one hand. If you got those 10 things being delivered by 3 different people on a team, they can manage until we get the third person filled back in. So what are they going to do? When a manager no longer is a manager, let's say they actually become a strategic leader. Here's the strategic leader's 3 main responsibilities. And again, everybody has these responsibilities, but it is more the focus of a strategic leader to do these 3 main things. The 3 main responsibilities of a leader are, I'll give them to you in short, and then we'll unpack them. Guard the values, champion the people, and pilot the results. If you have other things that you think leaders should do, I'm in. Find them for me and let's add them to the list. I'm not saying this is inclusive, but I am saying it's after decades of training people to be leaders and being one myself. These are the 3 things I found that I get to do when I stop being codependent, when I stop managing. I teach other people to make decisions, and I still have plenty to do. I can still guard the values, champion the people, and pilot the results. So guard the values, the belief system, the values, the principles, the vision, the mission. These things that comprise our true north, the compass that tells whether we are wandering or are properly focused. Guarding those things. The primary responsibility of any leader is to guard and tenaciously promote the values of the organization. The more the leadership has time and energy to guard the values, the more likely others are to focus properly on production, marketing, sales, revenue, and profits. One of the problems with a lot of companies is their values are simply something they put in the front of their investor manual in the annual report to make it look like they're actually doing something. Nobody even knows what they are. And they're too busy telling people what to do to actually pay attention to the values. What if we guarded the values? You could spend 40 hours, you could invest 40 hours a week just guarding the values. Number 2, champion the people. This is not managing the people. Championing is very different than managing. The needs of those who are directly responsible for production, for marketing, for sales, revenue, profits. 100+ years of research confirm that when we take care of the people, they take care of the business. Too often, leaders act like managers, making an end run around others and running the business themselves. Then they wonder why no one is engaged. Great leaders work through others, not around them. We know we're championing people because we're delegating both the task and the responsibility. And we know we're delegating the responsibility because they are now making the decisions we used to make. And they're bringing us the data and showing us the reports proactively, and we're just reacting. That's championing the people. We get them to the place where they bring the stuff to us and we get to look at it with them. Number 3, so number 1, guard the values. Number 2, champion the people. And the third thing you can do when you're out of the day-to-day micromanaging people is pilot the results. And again, this is not manage the results, nor is it pilot the process. The process is the purview of the tactical leaders. They're the ones who should be coming up with and running the process, buying the software, figuring out all those things on a tactical basis, not in a vacuum, but in concert with the strategic leaders who don't tell them what to do. They ask them hard questions. Managers tell, leaders ask. So pilot the results. The alignment between the desired corporate result and the process used to get that result. Managers hope that by micromanaging, by focusing on the process, they will get a better result. Leaders, on the other hand, focus on the result. This is another definite or distinction between managers and leaders. Managers focus on process, leaders focus on result. And they get the team to consult together with the leader to ask questions until there's alignment between the process and the result. They delegate figuring out the process to the work group. So the 3 responsibilities of a leader: guard the value, champion the people, pilot the results. If you were free, what if you didn't have any day-to-day activity issues? What if you were free to guard the values, to champion the people, to pilot the results, to beat that drum gently and relentlessly day after day? How powerful would that be for your organization? What if every person who was a leader in your organization could do the same? And I will say this before I forget. One of the advantages of getting rid of the management tax is that as managers become leaders or they go back into production, instead of having one manager for every 7 to 10 people, you have one leader for every 30 to 50 people. And they're actually paying for their way. You can actually show that they're increasing productivity, not destroying it. So here's a daily test for strategic leaders. How can you know if you're leading or falling back into the habit of management? Here are 2 simple daily measures you can monitor. Ask yourself, number 1, are you chasing data, waiting for reports or information? If so, you are managing and not leading. Delegate that to others who are responsible to provide you with the information you need when you need it, on your desk or in your email box or on the app by noon on Monday, whatever it is. Lead reactively. Get the stuff to come find you. If you're having to be proactive to chase data, you're managing. Number 2, test for being a leader. Ask yourself, are you assigning specific tasks to others, or are you delegating the responsibility for the result that comes with that task and the reports and the decision-making surrounding that task by training them? If you are merely assigning tasks, you are managing and not leading. Responsibility requires decision-making and creates ownership. Completing a task merely requires one small action without reference to the whole. Put this nut on that bolt. That's delegating the task. Make a great washing machine. That's delegating the responsibility. So those are 2 daily simple tests for how you can see whether you're a leader. I want to move on to one of the greatest assets, and I would say the greatest asset of any leader. We talk about assets, and we think of people, sadly, as an asset, but we also think of cash and infrastructure and market share and finances and proprietary knowledge. Yeah, those are all assets. But I would suggest to you that the leader's greatest asset is trust. We don't think of trust as an asset. In the participation age, trust is the primary asset in every relationship. Without it, there's suspicion, wariness, or simple lack of engagement. Nothing matters more to the strategic or tactical leader then building mutual trust. Well, how do we get there? Well, if trust is the greatest asset, I spent years trying to figure this out for myself. Trust is my greatest asset. Therefore, the greatest practice to develop trust is consistency. Trust is my greatest asset. My greatest practice is consistency. Say what I'm going to do and then do what I said. Consistent behavior is the only way to build trust, whether it's with your kids, your dog, or a human being, an adult at work. Say what you will do and do what you said regarding values, metrics, support, and processes. Nothing hurts a leader's credibility more than acting in opposition to what was agreed upon. Our greatest asset is indeed trust. We build it with consistent behavior. Say what you will do. I'm going to train you and then I'm going to get out of the way. And then do what you said. Train them and get out of the way. When my team senses that I'm overreaching as we interact, they know that they have the freedom and the responsibility to speak up. A billionaire connected with me to ghostwrite a book for him and helped me launch a new initiative. And as I began to work on the project, 2 of my teammates sat me down and expressed concern that working with him was not consistent with 4 of our 5 values. Only 4 out of 5, only 80% we were violating. With their help, it was an easy call to guard our values instead of taking on this project, and we moved on quickly and we fired that billionaire. I needed to practice what our values were, and I wasn't in the moment. And they were confident enough to come share that with me. Trust is your greatest asset. Consistency is your greatest practice to keep that trust. And then good management of people is not possible. I've had that argument with people. So you're saying a manager is never necessary? Well, not a manager of people. Managers of stuff. We're all managers of stuff. But no, management of people is never, ever necessary. It's not possible for it to be necessary. It's what we do with children. We manage children because they don't have grown-up capabilities and we haven't trained them far enough to where we can let them go. But if we're doing it right, we're constantly training them to take one more decision on one more and one more until they are adults. When we help leaders see the difference between managing and leading people, some respond that we're just talking about bad management versus good management. But confusing management with leadership is paralyzing. There are indeed good and bad leaders and good and bad managers. Here's a review of the difference. I would say that is your leadership organic or is it imposed? And I would have to say if it's imposed, it's probably not actually leadership, but that's what people think of it. My director comes and points at a new person and says, this is your new manager, and then they walk away. That's imposed leadership. Organic leadership is, hey, we need to hire a new team member. Let's all get together and connect with that person, and HR will help us figure it out, and we'll interview them together, and we'll make this decision, and we'll come up with that together. And if they are a leader, we will be part of the decision-making process. Organic versus imposed. Leaders rise up organically because people voluntarily follow them. It's the old saw, if you're out for a walk, or if you're looking behind you and nobody's there, you're out for a walk. You're not a leader. Managers are imposed and exert power and authority to control the people they manage. I would suggest most companies actually have never confirmed that they actually have any leaders because they've never allowed for the situation where people would actually voluntarily follow someone. They're all imposed. Organic leadership is what the participation age is built on. W.L. Gore, I talked about them earlier, the new CEO of W.L. Gore, she was elected by 10,000 people who voted her in. That is organic leadership. And that's how they do it all the time. It's not a board of directors in a power struggle. It's the people saying, who do we feel like could lead us the best? And that is leadership. Leaders have followers, managers have reports. The second major difference between good and bad leadership, good and bad management, others versus self. Leaders exist to serve others. If you think that you exist to use others to get to the next level of, quote, leadership, you're not a leader. Leaders exist to serve others. Managers exist to promote themselves and to use others to promote themselves. And we all just assume that. My job is to make the management look good, because if I do, I might get a pay raise, or at least I won't get fired. Some people are promoted not because they're good at helping others, but because they're singularly good at what they do, as in the heroic genius we mentioned earlier. Good leaders, on the other hand, gradually make themselves less important and eliminate codependency by training others to do things for them. Another difference, provide versus accumulate. Leaders provide vision, guidance, tools, access, support, training, opportunities, and connections to champion their people. But managers are about accumulating bigger departments, more people, larger budgets, all of which serves the manager and their department, not the mission, not the company, and not the people. Another difference, ask versus tell. Leaders train by asking good, open-ended questions. How do you think this will impact the rest of the company? Managers command by telling. Here's what you need to do. Managers partially justify their positions by saving others from making mistakes or having to figure things out. I can't afford to let these people make this mistake. The fact that you made it and now you know how not to do it, it's not an excuse. We will always be codependent as long as we save people from making their mistakes. We can save them from mistakes that are going to be strategically a problem, and that's the very few of them. And even then, we can train them to make those. But the manager's position requires them to be the most competent, highly skilled expert in the room. Conversely, great leaders understand that their job isn't to be the only ones who can generate new ideas or develop processes. It is to teach, equip, train, and free other people up to do those kinds of generating of new ideas and processes. We put together a T-chart showing a summary comparison of the positions, and I'll just very quickly go through some of that for those of you who aren't watching this on the video. If managers are imposed, and therefore they have reports. Leaders are organic, therefore they have followers. Managers promote self. Leaders promote others and make others prominent. Managers accumulate, leaders provide. Managers tell, leaders ask and train. Managers delegate tasks, and that makes people feel used. Leaders delegate task and responsibility, and that creates ownership. Managers focus on process, leaders focus on results. Managers manage by policies. Leaders lead by vision, principles, and mentors. I can do a whole nother podcast on why HR policies and HR manuals are one of the worst things that we can rely on and how they create much more problems and legal situations than if we just threw them away. Managers are proscriptive. I forbid and I limit. Leaders are prescriptive. I recommend and I release. Managers have roots in slavery, serfdom, and military. Leaders have roots in movements, ideas, values, and beliefs. And finally, leaders are a necessary factory system artifact. And leaders are timeless and necessary in every organization going forward. Many misnamed managers focus on serving and should correctly be renamed as leaders. Remember, manage stuff, lead people. In the next podcast, we're going to give you some very practical ideas on how to be a better leader and let go of management altogether. I'll see you there.
That wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.